Thank you. Thank you very much. You're all very kind, especially Director Barbado. She's been extremely helpful to us, as has Director, or I should say Deputy Director Joe Cummings, as well as Deputy Director William Carlson. And indeed, I'd be remiss not to mention in great esteem the OEM coordinator for the Township of Dunellen, Mr. Homer Mosley. So once again, thank you. It's quite a privilege to be with you all. Now, today, we're going to cover quite a lot of important information. I'll see to it we get through all of it in a timely manner. So, back to school safety. What is it all about? How can we maintain it, particularly for those youngsters that in some areas might be at risk? Well, that's the primary focus of today's talk. So, how can they get to and from school in a safe way? Well, there are a couple things we can teach them. Firstly, their phone number and their address, as well as how to get in touch with their parents who might be at work, and they must be able to get in touch with another trusted adult if that parent cannot be reached. And obviously, they must be able to reach 911. In addition, they should not talk to strangers or accept rides from anyone that they do not know, ever. Now, if your child walks to school, they should be taught the following. They should walk on the sidewalk, not the street, please. And if there's no sidewalk, they should walk facing the vehicle traffic. There's an important reason for this. If they walk on the same side and in the same direction as cars, a car can pull up behind them silently without their knowledge. A person could jump out, grab them, throw them into the car, drive away, and the child will oftentimes never be seen again. So they should always walk in the opposite direction of street traffic. So they should also look to the left and to the right and then to the left a second time to see if cars are coming before they try crossing the road. They should also cross the street at a corner and obey all traffic signals. And they should stay in the crosswalk, no jaywalking if you can help it. And they should never run into the street or cross between parked cars. You always have to remain vigilant. Now, what if the student rides a bus to school, or if they're going on a field trip or a sporting event, and so forth? They should remember this. They should get to their bus stop early and stand away from the curb while waiting for the bus to arrive. It's very difficult for these quite long vehicles to make tight turns. Also, they should board the bus only after it has come to a complete stop and the driver or bus attendant has instructed them to climb aboard. And they should only board their bus, never a different bus. It's a great way to cause a lot of confusion and to lose a child. They should also stay in clear view of the bus driver and never walk behind the bus. It's very difficult for these drivers of, once again, these large vehicles to see behind them. Now, if a student rides their bike to school, this is what they should remember. They should always wear a helmet. This is paramount because little children have brains that are still developing. In fact, the development will continue into adulthood, and that's why a head injury at a young age can be absolutely devastating. So everyone, even the adults, should wear helmets. They should ride once again on the correct side of the street. So the one that is moving in the same direction as traffic, as opposed to if they were walking on the street or on the sidewalk. There's not as much danger of abduction since they will be in all likelihood in continuous motion. Now, if you drive your child to school, you should teach them that they should always wear a seat belt. Younger children should use car seats or booster seats until the lap shoulder belt will fit properly, which will usually be for children about 8 to 10 years of age, or people that are over 4'9". And they should ride in the back seat until they are at least 13 years of age. Halloween safety. Let's go over a couple of rules to remain safe during trick or treating. I'll just be going over a couple. Firstly, you should make sure that costumes are short enough to avoid tripping. That's always a good idea. Please tell the kids to walk and not run from house to house using the sidewalks when possible. And of course, you should also consider other options to trick-or-treating, such as trunk-or-treating, which is offered by some churches and the Dunellen Halloween Parade. It's always a fun time, quite safe indeed. Now, if you have a teen that's driving to school, you should make sure they remember this. They should use their seatbelts always. It's illegal not to use a seatbelt, of course. And this goes not only for the teens, but also for all individuals in a vehicle. They should not use their cell phones to text or to make calls, and they should avoid eating or drinking while driving, as well as any other distractions. Now, if you're considering getting your student a cell phone, please ensure that they download the free Red Cross First Aid and Emergency app to give them access to first aid tips for common emergencies and real-time weather alerts. You can find the app on the smartphone app store, as well as by searching for the app on the American Red Cross website, redcross.org. Now, what about sports safety, as well as bullying and cyber security and firearm safety? As for sports safety, if a student is joining a sports team, please make sure that they wear the necessary protective gear, such as helmets. Again, you have to protect the young developing brain, and protective pads and so forth. They should be sure to warm up and cool down afterwards to avoid sprains and other injuries. And they should watch out for others, especially in those sports where they'll be doing a lot of running, like say soccer. Also, this is very important. They should know the location of the closest first aid kit, as well as AED, or automated external defibrillator, the only hope of a child, or anyone for that matter, whose heart has stopped, which in some rare cases can happen during intense physical exertion or a blow exerted to the center of the chest at just the right time in the heartbeat. As for bullying, the risk factors for such are as follows. They are characteristics which may increase the likelihood of experiencing or perpetrating bullying or youth violence. Bullying and violence are not often caused by a single risk factor, but rather by a combination of factors. These risk factors can be personal or environmental. Sometimes they can be both. They occur at the individual, the relationship, the community, and the overall societal levels, and can increase the likelihood of perpetuating this kind of violence. So we must understand and address these factors that will put youth at risk of bullying and some important preventative measures that can be taken. Now, online safety. We must discuss this because social media use among the young people is virtually universal, with up to 95% of teenagers and even 40% of children ages 8 to 12 on various kinds of social media on a daily basis. Online messaging can indeed be hurtful. Cyberbullying is a very serious issue in today's day and age and can include posting mean or threatening messages on social networking sites, sending pictures of someone over a text message, hacking into social media, an increasingly severe problem, or emails, and sending inappropriate or unkind messages. Here are a couple of tips that you can employ to remain safe online and ensure that your child can do the same. Firstly, you should talk to your kids about online safety openly and on a frequent basis. You should also create guidelines together on how to stay safe on the web. And of course, you should know who your kids are talking to online by spending some time with them over the internet. It doesn't hurt to get to know some friends of friends. Now, if someone is being bullied or harassed online, children should be encouraged to, firstly, tell you or any other adult that they trust. You should, of course, remind children that social messaging is to be used for positive communication, not to send any hurtful messages. Now, here are some protective factors that you can use to prevent bullying. Some characteristics that may decrease this likelihood of experiencing and perpetrating bullying, in the case of youth violence as well, would be understanding and addressing the risk as well as those protective factors that can help identify opportunities for the prevention of bullying, as demonstrated in the following video.
Risk factors for violence occur in people's lives, their relationships, and where they live. But major differences exist in how risks impact individuals and groups. We invited participants for an exercise to explore how.
If you witnessed or experienced violence in the home as a child, take a step back. If you were bullied at school, take a step back. If your parent lost a job and was out of work for several months, take a step back. If an immediate family member went to prison, take a step back.
I didn't have a great relationship with my parents growing up. They were constantly stressed and fighting, often because of money. I was diagnosed with ADHD, so I needed a lot of extra help in school, and also we moved around a lot, so I was constantly trying to play catch up.
You know, my mom and I lived in a rough neighborhood. There were gangs around, people out of work. It was tough.
The big plant in town, it shut down, and people started moving away. I felt like our sense of community is disappearing, and it affected my relationship with my friends, but mostly my wife.
There are also things that protect people from violence in all its forms at every level.
If a parent or trusted adult was available to talk to you and help you tackle everyday challenges and stressors, take a step forward. If you were involved in sports or other school activities, take a step forward. If you graduated from high school, take a step forward. If you grew up in a community that supported education, economic opportunity, and recreational activities, take a step forward.
One thing that really impacted me was a free after-school leadership program in the community we moved to and finally stayed in. They had volunteers from local organizations who helped us learn leadership skills and topics we were interested in, like technology, science, art, and media. They really cared about me and gave all of us what we needed to succeed throughout high school.
I got a new job, and I got retrained.
Now, I understand firearm safety can be rather a taboo at this time, but we must discuss it because it is becoming an increasingly prevalent part of our everyday society. Now, according to the CDC, the best way to prevent unintended firearm consequences is to securely store those firearms. You should keep firearms unloaded, locked, and separate from ammunition in a secure lockbox or gun safe. You should also teach children about gun safety and not to touch a firearm if they find one, under any circumstances. You should consider encouraging your child to communicate knowledge of chatter about guns among their peers, to you and to another trusted adult, such as a teacher or other school officials. And please consider asking friends and family about the presence of unsecured guns in their homes, since your child might be visiting them. Now, as for safety for the entire family, we must know the basics of emergency preparedness. So we have hazards, which can indeed cause emergencies. And as for emergencies, those are essentially just small disasters like a home fire. And then a natural disaster or any other kind of disaster is an emergency of emergencies. An example of that might be a fire involving an entire apartment building. The disasters can be local, or they can be regional, or even larger. And we must help children cope with their anxiety, as well as by navigating language barriers. Much the same can be done. So again, a hazard is simply something that can cause danger or risk to a person or multiple people. And then with a disaster, they can be natural or they can be man-made. They can impact people, homes, schools, workplaces, neighborhoods, towns, cities, or even entire states or nations. They can be small, such as the home fire I mentioned, or much larger, like a hurricane or a flooding event that can happen with little or no warning. But whatever the size of the disaster, they can bring great harm and stress to any individual or group and their household. They may also damage or destroy property. So, an emergency. It affects a small group of individuals, and that is also when you call 911. Now, which hazards do we face most frequently in this state? Indeed, we see at some point or another all of those on your screen currently. However, the ones that are encircled are the ones that we see the most. We get hurricanes more often than one might think, certainly far more often than almost any portion of the United States. And we get quite a good amount of flooding all throughout the year, but particularly during the rainy seasons, which include right now, when things start to warm up and when they begin to cool down. Finally, home fires are by far the most common emergency that we face in the United States as well as elsewhere in the world. They are 95% of emergencies or disasters responded to by the American Red Cross. And that is why later we'll be talking more about home fire safety. Here are a couple of ways in which you can prepare for an emergency or disaster. Firstly, you can get together a get up and go bag, as demonstrated before you. We will be showing you also some of the items every get up and go bag should have, so that this way you can be prepared to get up and go in 60 seconds or less if a disaster is well on its way. Firstly, we have a water bladder. When you find some place, if you can't do so in your home, that offers an abundance of water, please take the time to fill this bladder with it so you have plenty for quite a while. Here, we have the tried and true first aid kit. Absolutely every home should have one of these. You never know when you might be out hiking or escaping because of disaster and you scrape your leg. You might avoid a very costly or dangerous infection by simply taking 2 minutes to disinfect the wound with one of these first aid kits. Also imperative is the humble radio, more specifically, the NOAA-enabled, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, battery-powered radio. Because, of course, power and communications in the form of the internet or cell service might be wiped out for some time as a result of a large-scale disaster. And that's why, to maintain communications with those who know what is going on with regard to the disaster, such as weather services, you should have one of these radios. A flashlight. Of course, if it's very dark in your house on account of loss of power, you should never use an open flame to illuminate that house. There's far too much danger of a home fire. Please use an electrical lantern or one of these flashlights. Non-perishable food, also very important. You should have enough to last everyone at least 2 weeks. And obviously, additional sources of drinking water. Once again, enough for everyone for 2 weeks. If the disaster is very large, you never know when you might be able to get your hands on more food or clean water. Also, you should make sure you bring enough batteries to keep your radio, your flashlight, and all other necessary devices powered for, once again, at the very least, 2 weeks. It would also be very useful to make a safety plan with everyone in your house. If we're talking about, say, one used for home fires, you should remember at least the following 3 things. Firstly, if there is a house fire, you have only 2 minutes to escape. There's no time to dilly-dally, looking for your keys and so forth. Secondly, you should have at least 2 different means of escape from every room and every hallway, as severe smoke, heat, and/or flames might be blocking your primary means of exit. And finally, as soon as you can, it is recommended that you come together with everyone in your household and talk up a plan on where you would meet outside in the event of a fire, so everyone can be accounted for and the firefighters don't have to go in to save someone and risk their lives that might not even be in the house. And finally, you should continue to be informed before, throughout the entire duration of, and after the disaster, like with the radio that I mentioned. Because once again, it might look like it's safe to go outside, but the storm might not necessarily have passed over. So you must maintain contact with the officials who know what they're talking about. Now, with hurricanes, it might not seem like it because things are beginning to cool down, but we are still in hurricane season. It goes all the way until November. So here on the East Coast and elsewhere near the Atlantic Ocean, that is between June and November, and Hurricane Helene and Milton, as I'm sure you're very familiar with, unfortunately, have been some of the products of this hurricane season. Disaster relief efforts are still ongoing for those events. Now, let's hear a bit more about helping people, and particularly the youngsters, prepare for various disasters with our Red Cross mascot, Pedro the Penguin.
Prepare for hurricanes! So a hurricane's coming, do you stay or go? You'll get an alert on your TV or phone. Or radio. Shelter in place means stay where you are. Evacuate means leave. Come on, get in the car! Let's go! Shelter in place means stay, stay, stay. Right where you are, with no windows far away. Evacuate means go, go, go. Someplace else, local alerts will let you know. When you evacuate, where should you go? Go to a safer place. Your alerts will let you know. Shelter in place means stay, stay, stay. Don't go away. Evacuate means go, go, go. And now you know.
There we have it, our buddy Pedro. As for flood alerts, let's discuss exactly what they mean. They will come in various types, especially flash flood watches and flash flood warnings. In the case of a flash flood watch, it means that the event is possible in your area because conditions there are favorable for the event to occur. But with a flash flood warning, what that means is that the event is already occurring or is essentially imminent. And that is why, in the case of a flash flood watch, it's time to get prepared if you haven't already. You still have a little time. But with a flash flood warning, which has already been detected via the naked eye or by radar, you no longer have enough time to go out and get ready. That's why you have to be prepared ahead of time, because as my parents and the Red Cross would always tell me, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. So, when there is a flood, can anyone tell me a couple of the dangers that may arise as a result?
About drowning.
Yeah, that's right. People could drown. Any other suggestions?
Crocodiles if you're in Florida.
That could be a danger, yes, if you're down in Florida or similar areas. Did you raise your hand?
Unsanitary water, no like drinkable water.
That's right. Contamination of water. That's another problem. Well, firstly, if there's flooding, you should get to higher ground if possible, and if weather allows for it. And you should avoid contact with water because, as mentioned, the water may be contaminated. That's a good way to get very, very sick. There may also be downed power lines that have gone into the water that may have electrified it, such that if you step in the water, you will be electrocuted and perhaps killed. Please do also remember to turn around, do not drown, because it only takes about 6 inches of relatively slow moving water to sweep away a person. And at 12 inches of relatively slow moving water, an entire vehicle can be swept away. So if you want to go down that road that takes you very quickly to your house, and it looks like you most likely can make it, but you're not too sure, please don't take the risk. Just go around. Better safe than sorry. Also, after a flood, you should let others know you're safe. It's quite a good idea. Best not to leave them worrying. Home fires. How can we be safer from them and survive more effectively if they do occur? Well, you should take the allure out of fire by teaching your children that fire is a tool, never a toy. And to help us do that, once again, is our trusty friend, Pedro the Penguin.
Ingredient number 1, 2-minute fire drills. We should test our smoke alarms monthly and practice fire drills twice a year. And when the smoke alarm beeps, let's be in it to win it and get outside in under 2 minutes. Ingredient number 2, escape plans. It's important to make an escape plan and practice it. And remember, when you see smoke, we oughta know you gotta get low and go, go, go. And finally, ingredient number 3, get out and stay out. Once you've reached your safe meeting place, stay there. In other words, once you're way out, you gotta stay out and never go back into a burning house. Whew-wee! Well, that just about does it. And normally I would close with something like a cook.
Thank you, Pedro. Also, Pedro has a fire challenge, very useful, especially for the youngsters. It is available at, of course, redcross.org. You can have a look at that, have your kids use it, take a look at it for yourself and the other adults present in the home to increase your fire safety knowledge that much more. On a very similar note, there's also Sparky the Fire Dog's website. As you can see here, it is at sparky.org/pledge, where people can go and learn about home fire safety and take the fire safety pledge. And they would even earn a little certificate, and they can play all kinds of games and do a lot of reading that will help them to once again better secure their home against the threat of domestic fire. There are also ways in which we can empower kids to help, especially via navigating language barriers when grown-ups may only speak Spanish, for one example. Let's learn more about that with our friend Leo the interpreter.
Meet Leo. He interprets así.
Hablo español y hablo inglés, por eso interpreto para mis padres. Interpretar es cambiar one language to another like a máquina. I interpret, yo interpreto, I interpret, yo, I'm ready to go. Cuando lo hago soy como un teléfono. A veces me da.
And here are some of the ways that these kids, as well as others, can go about navigating these language barriers. The children can help non-English speaking adults by alerting grown-ups of any emergency at home or at school, as well as knowing what to communicate to first responders, EMTs, firefighters, and police in particular. Also, parents can get a complete guide to these tips on, once again, redcross.org. Here are some other ways we can go about navigating those language barriers. The All About Me form, as imaged here, is useful for medical emergencies and other disasters. They contain very important medical information for all individuals involved, where there might not be enough time or enough knowledge of the native language to communicate them to first responders or others. You can complete it in English or Spanish, whatever you'd like. And you should keep it handy, once again, for those first responders if any emergency or disaster should strike. And if you are bilingual, the children can help complete the form, or they may simply show first responders where that form is located. Now, how can we go about helping these kids cope, both before, during, and after a crisis happens? Well, firstly, we can help the kids prepare emotionally, and you can prepare yourself with the following knowledge. Firstly, you should know which natural disasters are most common where you live, and talk about emergency preparation with your whole family. You should check your children's school as well as daycare and other locations where they regularly spend their time. And you should find out about their emergency plans and about youth violence mitigation, so you can reinforce them in the home as well. Also, you can visit the Red Cross's Emergency Resource Library at ready.gov/kids for more specific tips on what can be done and what can be discussed to further these goals. And you can also check out the Red Cross Kids video playlist on YouTube. All these videos are available in both English and Spanish. We have some ways in which you can provide guidance during a crisis to your child. Remember that your child's response would be shaped by yours. If you should show any alarm, your child may become more scared and seeing your fear as proof that the danger is very real. Now, if you seem overcome with loss, your child may feel their losses that much more strongly as well. And if you're able to demonstrate that you feel calm and in control, your child may feel more confident as well as better able to cope. Now, how can you help your child after a crisis? Once the danger has passed, you can ask what's on his or her mind and provide extra patience and comfort and support, as well as by avoiding having young children view the television or news reports of a disaster or other traumatic events, because these images can be very upsetting, particularly if the child is too young to realize that they are watching repeated footage and not, in fact, a new emergency. Now, for more information on this, the tips on helping your family prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies, as well as disasters, are to contact the Dunellen Office of Emergency Management for one. We have very many useful resources here. You can attend Safety Saturdays live, or you can get the replays of them on YouTube too. You can follow Dunellen Office of Emergency Management and Dunellen Community Emergency Response Team on Facebook and Nextdoor. You can consult the Red Cross Emergency Resource Library, as mentioned. And of course, we would be happy to come and speak to your group. Just speak with the township and we can arrange something quite quickly. So, I think it's time for a little pop quiz. There is no need to be worried, as this will only constitute 80% of your total grade. So, question number 1. When going to or from school, children should? Anybody? That's right. All of the above. They should walk on sidewalks facing the traffic, and if no sidewalk is available, they can walk on the street once again in the opposite direction traffic is moving. They should wear a helmet and ride in the same direction as the flow of traffic, as opposed to when they're walking, if they are riding that bicycle. And finally, they should never accept gifts, treats, or rides from any strangers. A good bus stop safety habit for parents and students would be, in this case, B, to board the bus only after it has come to a complete and total stop, and make sure that the driver or attendant has instructed the child to climb aboard. Number 3, a good way to help kids avoid, prepare for, and cope with disasters and emergency would be to, in this case, E, all of the above. Know which disasters are most common to your area, talk about emergency preparation, and involve the entire family to practice these activities. And you should keep computers in an open area where online activity can be more effectively monitored. And of course, you should provide extra comfort and support during any such emergencies or disasters. Number 4, True or false? They may have different names, but emergencies and disasters are actually the same thing. It turns out they're false. Like I said, emergencies are at a smaller scale, like a single home fire. A disaster would be an emergency of emergencies, such as a hurricane striking a very large area. So it's time for some questions and some answers if anyone should have any. Would like to ask any questions?
You mentioned flooding and what preparations people should bear in mind when it comes to flooding, or what preventative measures they could take. And I think you mentioned one, avoiding down power lines, turn around, don't drown, for example, was a common refrain. But one thing I think I wanted to point out is that we're tying this conversation to the children's and the parents' experiences, maybe navigating to and from school or field trips or to the babysitters or what have you. So given that's the lifestyle that we're kind of focused on, in some cases, you may or may not be the person driving your kid to school. So that means that maybe it's the older sibling, the 17-year-old or the 18-year-old or whatever the age is now, also needs to be aware of the kinds of things they should have in mind. That's why the family conversations around what they could potentially encounter in those situations is so important. Obviously, in Dunellen, we have ways of alerting our community, even within the school system, of maybe some impending, threat, whatever it might be, natural disaster or otherwise. And there are mechanisms within the school system to make parents aware of, for example, if there may be an early closing, or, there may be some other response that the school may take directly to an emergency event. But reinforcing these ideas at home, for example, with the home, why are we talking about fire safety at home? It's because at school, we have fire drills. It's routine and it's actually required by law that the schools engage in some of these preventative practices. And when we're doing this reinforcement at home, when we're having these conversations and actually maybe even practicing some of these drills at home, which can be fun, it helps reinforce that when the child is in a school environment, right? And they're more likely, one, to cooperate, two, to understand the relevance and the significance of what it is that they're engaged in. So I just wanted to make those couple of comments. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much. Anybody else with any comments or questions for Kyle?
I have a question. With the A and AED, there's one in every school. Am I correct in saying that?
I believe so.
Okay.
I don't on that,
Okay.
but I imagine that especially when it comes to the sporting events like Kyle alluded to, our recreation department is outfitted with that. I believe that is something that was a priority even for the library that's hosting us today, so that I know there was an effort to make sure that that was supplied and available in case there was an emergency event here, for example, and certainly in the schools. Generally speaking, I don't want to speak for the school system, but definitely any of the sporting events and any of the activities related to, physical exertion, I imagine would rely on those.
Thank you.
And if they don't, they should. It's one of the other things Kyle mentioned in terms of parents having communications with the schools and asking about what are your emergency protocols, trying to get an understanding. That would be a great question to actually put to, gym instructors or I don't know, coaches or whoever the appropriate contact might be in a school setting. So great question.
Yes, ma'am.
So why, when children are walking to school on the sidewalk, why should they be facing away from the traffic?
Okay, to repeat the question, if you don't mind.
Yes. So she asked, why is it that children walking on the street or on the sidewalk, which would be better, should walk in the opposite direction of traffic so that the cars are moving towards them? The reason for this is because if they were moving in the same direction as traffic, It would be much easier for a car to pull up behind them very quietly, for a person to jump out of the car, grab the child, throw him or her into the car, and drive away with them. So if you are moving opposite to the flow of traffic, you can see the cars coming. So you have much better warning to prevent any abductions. Of
Or a
course.
car hitting you.
Yes, that would be another issue. You could see a car
Yeah.
coming, so you reduce the likelihood of colliding with one.
Great questions.
Indeed.
Thank you for your questions.
Of course.
Okay, well, thank you so much, folks. We're gonna wrap up. If there aren't any other questions, I'll kind
Any
of take it from here. Thank you so much. So.
Thank you.
Okay, and why am I not advancing? Anybody want to help me out? Oh, thank you. He's the one that works. Okay, so basically we can all play a role in emergency management. We want to be able to keep learning, keep preparing, stay informed, and importantly, get involved at home, at school, with your emergency preparedness organizations such as ourselves, and of course our partners, the Red Cross. And these are ways that you can actually take advantage of the important emergency preparedness information that's out there. It's really everywhere. Our environment is really well seated with it. Definitely participate in Safety Saturdays when you can, and visit some of these websites where you can find really useful information, and even in greater detail than what we've covered here today. Right, so yeah, we talked about making plans. And also planning for pets, right? So one of the things that kids can do to help empower themselves during an emergency event is maybe help you prepare a go bag at home, help you prepare a go bag for the pet, because you need to think about those things too, in the case of some emergency situation. Okay, and yeah, stay informed, stay alert, stay connected. The Dunellen Office of Emergency Management CERT pages are on Facebook. You can follow us on Nextdoor. And then you can see here that there are a number of apps that you can take advantage of. The Red Cross has a couple, FEMA has a couple as well. Okay, and oops, let's go back up. Right, so we've made the point before about potentially getting involved and helping out. You're serving yourself, your families, and your neighbors. You know, you may have elderly neighbors or disabled neighbors, and neighbors who have some sort of challenge. And it's just more empowering to be in a position to help yourself when you're not officially a first responder, but you sort of are. In an emergency situation, before a first responder shows up, we are our own first responders, right? So while CERT and OEM are not officially CERT responders, they're part of the agency that assists first responders and assist our community in becoming effective at being their own first responders. So if you have questions or comments about Safety Saturdays, you want to provide some input, there are topics you think we should be covering, you have questions about any of the content here today, feel free to contact me. My information is there. We also have an opportunity for you to suggest topics that you'd like to hear about. Challenges you may be facing that we haven't addressed or we're not addressing, and that we would want to be aware of so that we can incorporate it into our planning. We want to make sure we're reaching you where the need is. And yeah, if you have questions about OEM or CERT, and how that all works and how you can get involved, particularly if you're interested in training or joining the team, please contact our director and deputy coordinator based on the information on your screen. Other than that, thank you so much for showing up today. Spending some time with us. I appreciate you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice. Not very nice.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job putting a presentation together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really was.
All right.
Now, if I might bring up just a few other things.
Regional Preparedness Manager for New Jersey. So Without further ado, Kyle, thank you very much. Floor is yours.